Hey there. Tonight, we're not looking at kings with bad teeth or queens with too many cousins. We're going back much, much further. Before crowns, before palaces, before people even thought of inventing bread. We're heading straight into Greek mythology. The bedtime version. The version where nothing is rushed, everything is drawn out, and even the biggest cosmic battles sound more like distant thunder than front row action. So, if you're here to drift off, dim the lights, settle under your blanket, and let your mind wander. And if you are still awake by the end, well, congratulations. You've survived 1.5 hours of the most meandering mythological gossip ever recorded. All right, let's begin. Before there was anything, there was chaos. Not chaos like your kitchen junk drawer, but capital C chaos. Imagine an endless blank screen. No sky, no sea, no TikTok feed, not even the comforting hum of background noise. Just a vast, empty potential. And from this quiet void, slowly, something stirred. First came Gaia, the earth herself. Broad, eternal, patient. She was basically the original multitasker, destined to hold up everything else, whether she liked it or not. Then came Tartarus, the abyss below, more of a vibe than a place. Deep and shadowy, not exactly somewhere you'd want to Airbnb. And then came Eros, not the chubby baby with wings you see on Valentine's cards, but raw, fundamental attraction, the force that draws things together and keeps creation from just falling apart into lonely piles of dust. You could say Eros was the glue of the universe, though less Elmer's, more primordial magnetism. From the void also came Erebus, darkness, and Nyx, the night. They weren't villains, just necessary presences. Nyx, in particular, was a bit of a powerhouse. She went on to give birth to Day, Hemera, and Ether, light itself, which is sort of poetic, night literally producing day. But Gaia, as practical as ever, brought forth Uranus, the sky. He stretched himself across her like a starry blanket, and together Earth and sky started the first great family, which, as with most families, turned messy very quickly. Gaia and Uranus had children, 12 Titans to start, 6 daughters, 6 sons. Big elemental personalities. Oceanus, who wrapped the earth in a ring of water, Hyperion, connected to the sun, Themis, divine law itself, Mnemosyne, memory, which would one day be very handy for poets trying to remember their lines. The Titans were powerful, strange, and, let's be honest, a bit intimidating. Uranus certainly thought so. He found his children unsettling. Maybe they were too loud. Maybe he wasn't ready for fatherhood. Or maybe, like many dads, he just didn't know what to do with a dozen oversized, semi-divine teenagers. So he did what seemed logical to him and shoved them back inside Gaia. Yes, inside their mother, which is uncomfortable just to think about and definitely earned Uranus a spot on the worst fathers of mythology list. Gaia, understandably, was not thrilled about this. Having 12 divine children forcibly restuffed into your body is not exactly relaxing. So she decided something had to be done. She fashioned a great sickle from stone and whispered to her trapped sons, asking if one of them would help free the family from their overbearing father. Most of them stayed quiet, which, fair enough. Patricide isn't a casual hobby. But the youngest Titan, Cronus, stepped forward. Cronus was clever, ambitious, and a little too patient for everyone's good. Gaia handed him the sickle. The next time Uranus descended, Cronus ambushed him and, how do I put this politely, removed him from the family tree permanently. From the blood that fell, new beings were born. Giants, Furies, and the lovely goddess Aphrodite, who rolls from sea foam and scandal. Because apparently, in mythology, body parts are just another form of creative starter kit. With Uranus out of the picture, Cronus became king of the cosmos. And at first, things seemed fine. He ruled alongside his Titan siblings. The world started to take shape, But of course, there was a catch. There is always a catch. Cronus had been warned that one of his own children would overthrow him, just as he had overthrown his father. And being a responsible and level-headed ruler, he immediately started swallowing his children whole, as you do. His wife, Rhea, was understandably upset about this. Imagine giving birth, handing the baby to dad, and go, gone. Not the family bonding moment she had hoped for. By the time she was pregnant with her sixth child, Rhea had had enough. She gave birth in secret and handed the baby, Zeus, to a group of nymphs to raise in a cave on the island of Crete. Instead of the baby, she gave Cronus a stone wrapped in swaddling cloth. And apparently not the most observant eater, he swallowed it without question. Zeus grew up in hiding, nurtured on honey and goat's milk, as one does in these stories. When he came of age, he confronted his father. With some divine trickery, accounts differ, but it involved a potion, Cronus vomited up the children he had swallowed. Out came Hestia, Demeter, Hera, Hades, and Poseidon, fully grown, slightly cranky, and accompanied by that large stone he had swallowed earlier. And with that, the Olympians were born, a new generation of gods, ready to take on the old. What followed was the Titanomachy, 10 long years of war between the Titans, led by Cronus on Mount Othrys, and the Olympians, led by Zeus on Mount Olympus. At first, it was a stalemate. The Titans were massive, ancient, and terrifying, but the Olympians had wit and strategy, and Zeus had one more trick up his sleeve. He descended into Tartarus and freed the Cyclopses and the Hecatoncheires, who had been imprisoned there long ago. In gratitude, the Cyclopses gave divine gifts. To Zeus, the thunderbolt. To Poseidon, the trident. To Hades, the helm of darkness. Ancient weapons. Basically, the godly equivalent of cheat codes. With these, the Olympians finally won. The Titans were defeated and cast down into Tartarus. Zeus, Poseidon, and Hades divided the world between them, sky, sea, and underworld. Earth, of course, was left for all to share. And so, the Olympian order began. Zeus thundered from the heights of Olympus. Poseidon ruled the restless seas. Hades, ever the introvert, settled quietly into the underworld, where he preferred the company of shades to that of his siblings. The rest of the family filled in around them. Hera, proud and sharp, became queen of the gods and goddess of marriage, which was ironic considering her husband's wandering attention span. Demeter tended the earth, turning fields golden with harvest. Hestia, gentle and constant, kept the hearth fire burning. Athena, sprung fully armed from Zeus's skull, yes, apparently migraines can be productive, became goddess of wisdom, war, and craft. Artemis, wild and free, roamed forests with her bow. Apollo, radiant, strummed his lyre and whispered prophecies at Delphi. There was Hermes, sly and wing-footed, messenger of the gods and patron of thieves. Hephaestus, the lame but brilliant smith crafting weapons and wonders. And, of course, Aphrodite, weaving love and chaos with equal ease. Last came Dionysus, god of wine and ecstasy, the eternal party guest who never quite left. Together they became the Olympians. Quarrelsome, vain, brilliant, and utterly human in their divine squabbles. From them would spill out the myths of heroes and monsters, tragedies and romances that echo down to us even now. And that, my friends, is where we'll rest for tonight. We've drifted from chaos, through the rise of earth and sky, all the way to the glittering heights of Olympus. But the odds are in place, the stage is set, and next time we'll wander into their endless, messy stories. So, close your eyes, let the thunder fade to a murmur, and imagine the stars overhead, watching quietly, as they always have.
So, now that we've set Olympus on its lofty mountain perch, let's take a slow stroll around the table. Picture it like a family reunion that never ends, with thunderclouds instead of potato salad, and arguments that span centuries. We'll begin, naturally, with Zeus, because Zeus would insist on it. Zeus, king of the gods, lord of the sky, thunder wielder, and self-declared CEO of Olympus. His image in statues is very majestic, bearded, broad-shouldered, holding lightning like it's just lying around the house. But in personality, well, Zeus was the kind of boss who never stopped micromanaging and always blamed someone else when things went wrong. His thunderbolt, forged by the Cyclops, was his ultimate tool of authority. If mortals got too noisy, he'd toss one at them. If cities annoyed him, boom, lightning storm. He could go from calm blue sky to full thunder tantrum in seconds. But Zeus's greatest claim to fame wasn't actually his leadership. It was his endless romantic escapades. And by escapades, I mean shape-shifting, questionable choices, and a track record that would get anyone else permanently banned from Tinder. He pursued mortals, nymphs, even other deities, often disguising himself as something ridiculous, like a swan or a shower of golden light, because apparently subtlety wasn't his thing. The results were dozens of demigods, heroes, and legendary figures populating the myths. Heracles, Perseus, Helen of Troy, all conveniently traced back to Zeus. Because why not double down on divine nepotism? Beside him, reluctantly, sat Hera, his wife, his sister, queen of the gods. She was the goddess of marriage and childbirth, which sounds wholesome, except for the fact that she spent most of her time furious at Zeus's extracurricular activities. To mortals, Hera could be protective, stern, a figure of dignity. To Zeus, she was the voice of rage he couldn't quite silence. And to Zeus's lovers and children, well, Hera's vengeance was legendary. She didn't go after Zeus directly. He was a bit too powerful for that. But she made life miserable for her partners and their offspring. Poor Heracles spent most of his career dodging Hera's creative punishments. Some modern readers think Hera was cruel, but really, imagine being married to Zeus. Eternity is a long time to put up with a husband who can't pass a tree without turning into an eagle and chasing whatever's under it. Hera's bitterness feels less like villainy and more like cosmic exasperation. Next at the table, Demeter, goddess of the harvest. She didn't shout as loudly as the others, but her power was quiet and absolute. Crops sprouted where she walked, fields turned golden at her touch. Civilizations depended on her goodwill. But Demeter had a streak of iron under her maternal calm. When her daughter, Persephone, was taken by Hades into the underworld, Demeter's grief was so consuming that the earth itself withered. Crops failed, famine spread. Humanity teetered on the edge of collapse. The gods had to intervene, creating the compromise we now know as the seasons. Persephone spending part of the year below with Hades and part above with her mother. A mythic explanation for winter and spring, but also a reminder that Demeter's sadness could reshape the entire world. Then there was Hestia, gentle, steady, quiet. She ruled over the hearth and home. Honestly, she was the least dramatic Olympian, which made her something of a rarity. She kept the fires burning, both literal and symbolic. She received the first portion of every sacrifice because even the gods knew someone had to keep the house in order while the rest of them bickered. Hestia avoided quarrels, dramas, and feuds, which probably explains why she's less remembered than her siblings. In a family of loud personalities, she was content to be the one who didn't throw furniture across the room.
Now let's drift to the other side of the table. Athena, goddess of wisdom, war, and crafts. She didn't arrive the normal way. No, she sprang fully armed from Zeus's skull after he swallowed her mother, Metis, because in mythology, birth is rarely straightforward. Athena embodied strategy, intellect, the calm planning before a battle. She wasn't chaos like Ares, nor tantrums like Zeus, but the sharp clarity of thought. Kings and heroes sought her counsel, though one imagines she had a habit of correcting them mid-sentence. She carried the Aegis, a shield with Medusa's head affixed, which was a handy way to end arguments. She was one of the virgin goddesses, sworn to no man, which kept her out of the endless cycles of divine romance. Instead, she poured her energy into guiding mortals, teaching crafts, weaving, strategy. She was practical, precise, and, if myths are to be believed, occasionally insufferable in her correctness. Then came the twins, Apollo and Artemis, children of Zeus and the Titaness Leto, born on the floating island of Delos after Hera tried to prevent their birth. Because, of course she did. Apollo was radiant, golden, the god of music, prophecy, healing, and the sun itself. He played the lyre like a divine rock star, and his oracle at Delphi became the most famous prophetic site in the ancient world. Though his prophecies tended to be so cryptic, they could be interpreted in any way you liked, perfect for covering up when things went wrong. But Apollo wasn't just light in song. He could also be vindictive, arrogant, and a bit too fond of punishing mortals who didn't appreciate his talents. Let's just say he didn't take rejection well. His twin Artemis was the opposite in many ways. Goddess of the moon, the hunt, wild animals, and young maidens. She roamed forests with her nymphs, carrying a bow and guarding the wilderness. Like Athena, she swore herself to eternal virginity, avoiding the complications of romance. But Artemis had a temper. Disturb her while she bathed, and you'd find yourself turned into a stag and torn apart by your own hounds. She protected those under her care fiercely and punished intruders without hesitation. Calm, silver light on one hand, merciless arrows on the other. Sitting a little farther down was Ares, the god of war. Not the clever kind of war. That was Athena's territory, but the blood, noise, and chaos of battle. The clash of spears, the screaming, the part everyone else would rather avoid. Even Zeus found Ares irritating, often calling him the most hated of his children. The other gods mocked him for his impulsivity. He was frequently wounded in battle, which was embarrassing for a god of war. But he represented the raw, destructive side of human conflict, the part that strategy can't tame. And then, limping slightly, but carrying tools of unimaginable power, came Hephaestus, god of fire, smithing, invention. Born lame, rejected by his own mother Hera, cast from Olympus, and yet he became indispensable. He forged weapons, palaces, automatons of gold. He made beauty from pain, engineering from exile. Zeus married him off to Aphrodite, perhaps as a joke, perhaps as a cruel compromise. Unsurprisingly, it didn't go well. Hephaestus hammered away in his forge while his wife entertained other company. But he remained the quiet craftsman, the one who built what the others only imagined. And then there was Aphrodite herself, goddess of love, beauty, and desire. Born from sea foam and divine scandal, she was irresistible, intoxicating, and often more trouble than she was worth. She could bend gods and mortals alike, making them fall whole. Her rivalries fierce. She was both the joy of love and the chaos of lust. And finally, there was Hermes, trickster, messenger, patron of thieves, travelers, and merchants. He wore winged sandals, carried a caduceus, and could talk his way out of nearly anything. Hermes moved freely between worlds, Olympus, Earth, the underworld, slipping past boundaries with a smirk. And last, Dionysus, the god of wine, ecstasy, madness, and theater. He was the youngest, a late addition, sometimes not even counted